Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, and on Wednesdays we talk about emotional well-being and relationships. But because it's July 30th, before we get started, a quick shout out to my ex, Kathy, the mother of our two children. Amazing person. Love you, Kathy. Yes, you can still find that the person you were married to once is amazing and that you can love them and so forth. You don't have to sing that Gautier song. uh, so, okay, so that said, let's get started, shall we? So empathy. Well, this refers to the cognitive and emotional reactions of an individual to the observed experiences of another. So having empathy increases the likelihood then of helping others and showing compassion. Talk more about that in a moment. But it's obviously a crucial ingredient in terms of helping to forge and maintain healthy relationships. How so? Well, simply put, it helps us understand the needs and the views and the intentions of others. And there's an important distinction I want to mention too between empathy and sympathy, right? So empathy involves understanding another person's experiences by imagining oneself in their shoes, in their situation. It's understanding another person's experiences as if you were experiencing them yourself, but of course without actually having exactly the same experience. And sympathy then, in contrast, involves the experience of being moved by or responding to another person's plight. But basically, it's the idea of feeling sorry for someone, but without necessarily sharing their feelings as such. Okay, and then as mentioned in the Monday vlog, I believe, maybe Sunday as well, whatever, maybe both, researchers distinguish between two types of empathy, emotional and cognitive. So especially in social psychology then, empathy can be categorized as an emotional or a cognitive response. It involves both components. So emotional empathy, though, consists of three separate aspects. So the first is the feeling of experiencing the same emotion as another person. The second component is personal distress, and this refers to your own distress that you might feel in response to perceiving another person's misfortune or their plight, their situation. And then the third component involves feeling compassion for another person, which is both the deep awareness of what the person's experiencing, but also the desire to alleviate their suffering. And so note that feelings of distress associated with emotional empathy don't necessarily mirror precisely the emotions that the other person's experiencing. While empathetic people feel distress when someone falls, for example, we aren't actually in the same physical pain that they're in. And so this is important when you're talking about trying to understand or be empathetic, especially in helping relationships and the helping professions, because then we have to understand what are in what senses should we be responding with empathy, to what degree, and how does that affect our responses, our levels of compassion, and so on. So there's a ton of research actually then on empathy amongst healthcare providers of various kinds, and especially the extent to which they're able to exhibit empathy and or that they might be trained out of being empathetic in the course of their professional education. And indeed, the research does generally show then that the empathetic healthcare providers, generally speaking, have greater trust with their patients, and generally then leads to better outcomes. So it's an important component. And in general, there's also a positive correlation then for all of us, the general population, in terms of the degree to which we're able to feel empathetic concern for others and being willing then to help others. So that might seem obvious, but it's an important distinction, because to the extent that we don't feel others' pain, that we aren't able to identify with others or feel empathy, then we're going to be less inclined to want to help people. We're going to be less compassionate towards them and so on. Okay, so that's on the emotional empathy side. Now, what about cognitive empathy? The second type is just as important, I would argue. It refers to how well an individual can perceive and understand the emotions of another person. So cognitive empathy is also known as empathic accuracy involves having a more complete and accurate knowledge about the contents of another person's mind, including how they feel or how they're experiencing a given situation. And so cognitive empathy is more like a skill that one can develop. Humans learn to recognize and understand people's emotional states as a way of processing emotions and behavior and understanding them. So from a mental health perspective, those who have high levels of empathy are more likely to function well in society. They'll typically report having larger social circles, networks of friends, and in general, more satisfying relationships. So again, this is all just these are generalizations that I'm drawing upon based on my reading of the research. If it changes, by the way, I'm happy to share that. Or if there are contradictions, I'm always willing to talk about those as well. And so in general, then, what we understand, and most of us already know this, of course, is that empathy is crucial to building successful interpersonal relationships of all types, in the family unit, in the workplace, and beyond. A lack of empathy, therefore, is one indication of conditions like antisocial personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, among others. In addition, for mental health professionals and people, therapists in general, having empathy for clients is an important part of successful treatment, typically. Therapists who are highly empathetic can help people in treatment face their past experiences and obtain a greater understanding of what's transpired, both in terms of their experiences and the feelings that are associated with those experiences. And it's one of the most important abilities then to have if you want to be a truly excellent and successful therapist, or just for that matter, if you just want to be a very good friend, a good listener, and a good understander in general. And yes, that's a real word, understander. So some people are better understanders than others. And I'm reminded of the old joke from the Seinfeld episode when they're talking about the car reservations, taking the car reservation and holding the reservation. And the idea of the joke there is the holding the reservation is sort of the most important part, right? It's good to take the reservation, but it's even better if you can actually hold the reservation for the person who comes in to rent the car. And so, to me, that's the same thing in terms of listening being a crucial aspect in communication. We all need to be good listeners, right? But then at the same time, understanding is arguably the most important part as well. So I can listen to people speaking Mandarin, but understand almost nothing beyond the few words that I know in Mandarin, right? So how far does that get me? So anyway, if you're out there listening and you're speaking Mandarin, ni hao, and by the way, just for being here, xie. And then I'll sign off later. But yeah, no, I don't know a lot of Mandarin, just a little bit. But in any event, okay. So listening is absolutely crucial, and then understanding takes us to that next stage in our ability then to respond effectively and talk to somebody and as I say, build a relationship in general. And indeed, empathy is hailed as one of the cornerstones to healthy relationships, enabling individuals to truly understand and resonate with the emotions of others. Empathetic communication is fundamental to nurturing trust. That is, through active listening and a non-judgmental approach, especially, individuals can then bridge the gaps that typically lead to misunderstandings, or at least allow us to connect with people and understand what it is that they're saying and they're experiencing. It provides kind of this safe space to allow for this open expression. And that really helps in terms of strengthening our interpersonal connections. So be a good listener. Be a non-judgmental listener if you can. Again, it depends on the context. And I've got a few bugs flying around here today. Our house is under construction or reconstruction, and so we've got some open spaces, shall we say. But be nice to the bugs too. Although I can't really do much if I'm driving down the highway at 100 clicks an hour and everything's bouncing off my windshield. But that's another story. Okay, so so empathetic communication is absolutely crucial then. And this is, it influences other interpersonal skills as well. And it cultivates typically our emotional intelligence, our ability to understand people more deeply It tends to promote greater degrees of cooperation and altruism and conflict resolution, which I'll talk about in a moment as well. Moreover, empathy contributes significantly to leadership and team dynamics as well. So that is, in organizational settings, empathetic leaders who practice active listening not only enhance their morale for their team in general, but also foster an environment that encourages collaboration and reduces conflict in general. So these leaders are usually crucial in terms of helping to maintain high-performing teams and in terms of just kind of achieving effective goals in general, whatever those might be, whatever the bottom lines are that the objectives that you're striving to achieve. So by practicing empathy, then, individuals create supportive interactions that contribute to stronger and more understanding relationships across the whole array of contexts, from friendships to romantic partnerships to professional collaborations. And so especially then, if you live in a family situation, and we all do at one time or another, I hope we do, although 28% of people are living alone these days too. But most people still have families. But the point is that in the family settings in particular, having empathy, again, allows people to validate the other person's feelings. It encourages open communication and a certain level of emotional support. And so, in general, it enhances these deeper kinds of emotional connections that are often so important, allowing people to resonate with one another, to then be able to more effectively express their care and support in whatever forms that might assume. And then you can develop your abilities to enhance your empathetic engagement with others as well, if you're willing to do a little bit of work and practice, and if you're interested in, learning certain techniques, shall we say. And starting with, and I mentioned this term before, active listening, right? So that is fully engaging in conversations. And by the way, that means putting down the cell phone or, and focusing one's attention exclusively on the other person, or at least in the context of that particular communication. And ideally without judgment too, because this then allows people to be fully heard, hopefully, and then understood accordingly, both through your supportive comments and usually through your physical responses as well, like, you're nodding in agreement, or touching somebody gently on the arm to show your support, or just a general expression of concern on your face, and so on. So that's one aspect. Empathetic or empathic reflection is another technique. And it's actually one of the first things that I kind of learned as an undergrad social work student years ago. It's kind of the Rogerian approach to recognizing and then reflecting back on what the other person's saying. So you actively respond in ways that reaffirm or validate what the person has said, maybe even repeating it directly, repeating their own words back to them, and as well as what they seem to be feeling. And by doing this, again, you're showing them that you're actively engaged, excuse me, and that you're empathetic and understanding of what's going on in their lives and as they're telling their stories, etc. The related technique is emotional validation, right? So not only you acknowledge what someone says and you accurately reflect that, but you also then accurately respond to their feelings that they're conveying. You can say things like, "Oh, I see you're really upset," right? "I don't blame you for that. Would make me really upset too," something along those lines. And I can see that you seem to be very sad about that, or you seem angry. Whatever it is, you're trying to read the emotions and reflect that back as well. And if you're wrong, that's okay too, because we're going to be wrong sometimes. Okay, the person can then just simply clarify, "No, I'm not. That's not it. I'm really feeling blank or blank." Right? Again, fill in the blanks. To which you can respond something like, "Oh, I see. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for clarifying. Now I understand better." Or, something along those lines. And then finally, you can sort of take a more open-ended approach as well, asking questions or otherwise encouraging the other person then to expand on their thoughts and their experiences. And then that often can lead to some real dialogue and insights. Okay, so each of these different techniques and more that are out there allow us to then enhance or establish trust and fosters a safe environment in which it allows people to kind of communicate more effectively. Okay. All right, and then empathy significantly improves relationships by allowing people to resonate, to understand with one another's feelings, whether that's their partner, their children, even a coworker, right? And again, this fosters then a deeper emotional bond. And it plays a crucial role in reducing conflicts as well. It facilitates the expression of feelings again, in kind of a safe and supportive space. And if someone feels truly heard and understood and validated, then they're more likely to share their thoughts openly. And then that in turn builds trust and so on. And then the research shows very clearly that promoting emotional empathy, intimacy, I should say, allows for much healthier relationships to develop over time. And so empathy truly does enhance the quality of relationships and leads to greater relationship satisfaction, regardless of the nature of the relationship. So empathetic individuals then engage in warm behaviors like cooperation and altruism, putting the other person first in many situations, or just trying to, if you will, put yourself in their position. And ideally, of course, it's a two-way street. That is, that you're both willing and able to engage and be empathetic towards one another. By the way, that's a really crucial red flag, too. If the other person in the relationship, or the person that you're talking to, basically, it could be a significant other, it could be a friend, whoever, it could be a coworker. If that person never displays empathy or assumes the listening and empathetic role, well, then that's a problem. It's probably more of a one-way street. And again, I don't know what the issue is there. Are they a narcissist? Are they, what's happening in that relationship? But yeah, that's a red flag. If you find yourself repeatedly just being the only one who's being supportive and empathetic, and it's a one-way street. Okay. And so basically, obviously, healthy relationships then require mutual emotional support, allowing each person then in their own time and having the space, if you will, to work through whatever challenges might lay ahead. And, again, hopefully in a more collaborative fashion. Okay. And then finally, empathy, as I mentioned, plays a crucial role in conflict resolution. So when disagreements arise, understanding the other person's perspective can obviously diffuse the tensions and foster constructive dialogue. I'll often joke with my students sometimes in class when we're talking about conflict resolution in the context of my courses, for example, on family violence or youth in conflict with the law, and there's a couple of others as well. I'll mention this about relationships and say, hey, do you ever stop in the middle of a heated argument and just turn to the other person and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm wrong on this one. And, we kind of laugh with that because, that basically never happens, right? I mean, myself included. How often would we actually be willing to do that? Take a step back, if you will. Sometimes later or after the fact, we might realize, oh, wait, I was being an idiot there. I truly was wrong, okay? But I'm talking about in the middle of the heated argument, it's almost impossible to stop that runaway train that's already rolling down the tracks and leading to the big blow up, shall we say. And of course, if we can be empathetic, then hopefully we don't allow the conflicts to, mushroom into these huge blow-ups, shall we say. And here's why, and here's the key. Because by stepping into the other person's shoes, individuals can address the underlying issues, and usually and hopefully without assigning blame, which then leads to more effective problem solving. And so practicing empathy during conflicts especially is important. It allows us to, this requires that we, again, engage in active listening and where we acknowledge each person's feelings, again, without judgment as such. And then this creates a safer environment for expressing our emotions, for reducing misunderstandings and enhancing our overall communication. But again, because so many people aren't that great at this, that's why there's so many professional therapists out there, right? If we were better at this, we wouldn't all need to go to therapy. But the good news is that I'm here helping in this regard, I hope, at least a little bit, and it's not costing you a penny, at least not beyond the expenses of powering whatever device you might be using to listen to me. I can't really help you with that. I suppose I could stand on a street corner and I could just randomly talk to people as they come by. But I don't know they'd necessarily listen. Anyway, okay, so ultimately, empathy is then about recognizing and responding to other people's emotions and their kind of their experiences, where they're at. And this, of course, is essential for building trust, for enhancing cooperation, and providing the essential emotional support that we all need from time to time in our various relationships. So if you can do that, if you can be empathetic, if you've developed your skills and your capacities in this regard quite well, you're probably a gem of a person. You're probably someone that, most people want to be around, okay? But even if you can't do it, even if you're not really great at being empathetic, remember too, you can still learn. It's never too late. All right. So as ever, in the meantime, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. And then tomorrow, we'll be looking at the neuroscience of empathy. So you'll want to tune in for that, won't you? Take care.